Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we are joined by Crist, the CIO of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Chris, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited to have the conversation today.
I'm excited to have the conversation with you. Thanks for coming on. And before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and a hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where CyberLynx intrusion detection comes in. With our 24/7 Security Operations Center, we use a combination of AI and cybersecurity technicians to know when a hacker successfully bypassed your security. So if a bad guy gets past your security, we'll know right away and be able to kick them out. Find out more at cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Chris, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about ATL and your role there as CIO?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I am the Chief Information Officer here for Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, otherwise known as ATL, right? ATL. It is the busiest airport in the entire world, right? So it's immense opportunities from a technological standpoint. There's never a dull day. As you can imagine, the complexities of running an organization like this. You got 63,000 employees that work here. You have every 40 seconds, a plane either lands or takes off. 300,000 passengers coming through this building every single day, and roughly 110 million every single year. It is an immense operation, and I'm just honestly really grateful to be here.
Wow, that is incredible. So let me ask you, I'd really like to, how did you get to this? How did you get to this point? I mean, that's a huge job. It is a monumental undertaking, to be the CIO of such an operation. How'd you get there?
Yeah, well, that's actually, when I say I'm grateful, that's actually a big part of the reason why is because of the path, actually. When you ask how I got here, to be frank with you, if I was 15 years old and I could see the future and I could see the situation, I just wouldn't believe it. I simply wouldn't believe it. I probably couldn't even comprehend it. and so I'm, gosh, how do I answer that, and briefly summarize, but, I do want to start by saying that, that I honestly didn't think that I could be in this type of scenario. So I'm very grateful. And so, if I kind of summarize that a little bit, I grew up, I'm actually mixed myself. I'm actually a part Hispanic, and, so I grew up with my Hispanic family, and, but I didn't have the opportunity to know my father until later in life, until I was 20. So, my Hispanic family, came from Mexico. My grandparents, they never went to any formal schooling. So they didn't know how to read or write. They never learned how to drive a vehicle or anything like that. And so they had to make it work. And, so they hoped for the best for their kids, which my uncles and aunts, including my mother. But unfortunately, none of them got through high school or even made it to high school, some of them. And so I honestly didn't think, I just saw what was around me, right? When it comes to my family, and they were a loving family, fantastic family, right? But didn't really see much in terms of a professional track or a college track or anything like that. My cousins, I just didn't see it around me. So to be honest with you, I just thought that I would just go down a path that aligned with what I was seeing around me, which certainly didn't include getting through high school and include just going directly to some sort of, position that doesn't require that college education or things like that. So yeah, I think, it wasn't until I joined the Air Force. I knew nothing about the military. I joined the Air Force right out of high school, and things kind of went from there. But I'm going to stop there because I could go with a lot of different paths. But things really picked up from there.
Well, no, actually, I love that because I had a very similar path in that, mine, although it wasn't immigrant parents, but it was my path out of kind of, that the struggling with poverty for my family was the Army. So that's fantastic. So let's go from there. So you joined the Air Force. What was your I guess you MOS, right? MOS for you
Yeah,
guys is, yep. What
yeah,
was your
and
MOS?
the MOS, yes, you being what, a Marine or Army?
Army
Did you
guys.
is
Yep.
Army guys? So it would make sense you would say MOS. Yeah, for the Air Force, AFSC. We got to be
Ah,
special, right?
that's
So
right.
the Air Force Specialty Code. But yes, I actually joined as a combat medic, actually.
Nice.
And again, not knowing much, there was something in me. Just being honest, I just wanted to help people in some way. I just didn't think I'd be able to be in that position. I got exposed to a few different situations where I saw, an emergency situation, I saw these medical professionals come in and just save the day. And I thought, you know what, if I could be kind of like that, that'd be great. And so it seemed like I had that opportunity. And so that's why, I joined the medical profession in the Air Force. Yeah. And but that's, where I got exposed. You bring up, growing up in a poor situation, things of that nature. So, I got exposed to others because, again, joining right out of high school was very young. There were a lot of other people joined, of course, very young, in
Yeah.
the military. And I saw that there were plenty of people of all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of ethnicities, all sorts of backgrounds, different countries, even coming here, joining our military, and they were going to college. They were going to college and getting it done. And I thought, whoa, okay, if they can do that, can I do that? And I remember, and thinking back now, it's crazy, but I remember talking to one of my supervisors, and I asked him, I was like, hey, can I go to college? And
Yeah.
they, they looked at me with confusion, like, well, what do you mean? Can you go to college? What can you elaborate? I said, well, I mean, am I able to go to college? Can I something I can do? Like, well, yeah. Do you not know how to get started? I was like, I have no idea what
Oh,
to do to get started.
yeah.
So yeah, it kind of went from there, and I had some folks believe in me, and yeah, pursued college, and I just opened my world a little bit. Yeah,
That's
very
awesome.
thankful for that.
It's funny because it's, again, it's very similar path. When I got to my first duty assignment, which was in the 82nd Airborne Division, it's one of these hard charging infantry
Mhm.
divisions where it's wheels up anywhere in the world within 2 hours.
Yeah,
So you were not
yeah,
allowed to go to college. The people who were going to college, they re-enlisted to get like 1 or 2 semesters of college. That was
yeah,
like how they suck. I was like, oh, that's crazy. And for, I don't think I want to do that. And then I went I was going on the intel side. I was an interrogator, and they taught me Spanish. And then I learned that I could go back for Mandarin Chinese. So I went back to the Defense Language Institute for Mandarin Chinese. And after that, I got to one of these very cushy, much more like an Air Force type of assignment where it was very
yeah,
nice. And I was like, oh, this is what it's like to be in the Air Force. Very nice. That's where all the smart people go.
yeah.
And then if they're not smart enough to join the Air Force, they join the Navy, and it just goes down from there. And
Right.
right. And so
Yeah,
anyways, it wasn't until I got to Japan, I got to this nice assignment in Tokyo, where everybody was going to college. They had the University of
right.
Maryland. They had a little satellite office there on base, and
Yeah,
they were like, yeah, you can sign up. And it was one of those things where I had no idea how to start. And you ask somebody, they're like, yep, you just go here, fill this. Okay. And away you go. And they help you on the path. And it was incredible. Yeah.
yeah. Fascinating. I thank you for sharing that. I think for the longest of time, to be honest, for the longest of time, I was yeah, I was embarrassed. I think I was embarrassed because I felt like I started life on the wrong foot in a way. I didn't really realize that until later when I saw that so many people apparently were going to college and getting it done, and so I was a little embarrassed later in life to talk about how I didn't know what to do. I
Yeah.
didn't know how to get started. I didn't know any of that. So it's gotten of course, a lot easier to explain that story. And as a matter of fact, that's why I wanted to talk to you today. I think, again, thank you for sharing your story. But I think that what I've recognized when I think back on those experiences and hearing yours is, unless, like, if we think about, there are so many different areas in the United States that, when you look at the demographics, it can be pretty rough, right? There's certain areas of the country, it's a little rough, to grow up there. And you can only imagine, the exposure that they may get. And in some of those cases, they simply do not have the exposure to people who go off to college or have the opportunity to even pay for it or have parents that even care about it. My So I was telling this story the other day about the ACT in high school, right? I didn't even know what it was. Nobody in my family knew what it was. I went to take it. I didn't even care about it. I've considered it another test. That's just a perfect example of how your upbringing and those you're surrounded by can shape your expectations, right? So to hear you talk about how you went to the environment, you're seeing other people going to college, you're seeing that situation with like the Air Force type scenario,
Yeah.
because the Air Force does value college, right? They value the smarts. So that really, that can really help someone to change their path
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
mean, it's so tough. When it's what, as you said, it's being in that environment where that's what you're surrounded with, your peers. I don't think people pay enough attention to or put enough importance on the value of your peer group, right? I mean,
Right.
it is just so important who you spend time with, who you're around, and
Yeah.
and I think people really, yeah, they know that that's important, but I don't think people really realize just how important it is in terms of,
Yeah.
if you want to achieve some sort of goal. I mean, it's not
Mhm.
necessarily the end all be all. You might have perfectly nice friends, just like you said, your family, beautiful, wonderful
Oh,
family,
absolutely.
so
They are.
loving. I'm sure salt of the earth, best kind of people, so
Mhm.
loving, just amazing, right? I think, yet not in terms of being able to help you achieve any sort of goal that you might have, probably
Mhm.
not the best resource, right? And
Yeah.
so just simply being around, and I see, like our kids here, they grow up, with these their peers. Everybody expects them to be, you have these phenomenal SAT scores and be taking all these AP classes and go to great colleges. And that is the that's the bar. Like, it's the bare minimum, it's the expectation. It's because they're all doing it. And yet we grew up in an environment where that wasn't the case.
Right.
And so it's real. I love these stories of, and I want to dive into how,
Yeah.
how you went from that, because I think
Mhm.
these are such great stories, and I think there's so many other people who are in those same positions, and they need to
Yes.
kind of, these stories I think are the ones that really need to be shared. So
Yes.
can you tell how you went from that, and like
Yeah.
kind of take us through it a little bit
Yeah.
here, as you went into the Air Force, you start
Yeah.
going to college. I'm assuming University of Maryland, or
No, actually. So I knew so little about college that my mindset was I'll go to any college that will take me. I'll go to any college that's accredited. And because I'm active duty military, right? To your point, it's hard. You kind of have to have a flexible university.
yeah.
You might have to have a hybrid situation or what have you. And so I went to a college that was also integrated on the base. So as soon as my shift was done for the day, I would go directly down the road and run down there and sit in class, right, and go through that. So it was actually a local university to where I was stationed at the time. So it was just a community college at first. Honestly,
Awesome.
it was Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. That's what it was. I was
Nice.
stationed down in Biloxi, Mississippi, at Keesler Air Force Base. So, and then continued to go through there and eventually got my associates. But I will tell you that for me, I had the 6-year commitment, right, active duty, and during that 6 years, I was committed to I'm going to do my best. I'm going to get as much education as I can. I'm going to get the certifications. I'm going to get all the experience I need so that I can prepare for. It was all put in me to prepare for a different life. Leave the military and do something that I never thought that I could. And so that was my goal. And I'm telling you, Matt, I had no life for 6 years. I had no life. I went to college. I did my military obligations. I also made some pretty big adult decisions at a very young age. I was 19 when I got married. So I was, working. Yeah. Okay. Seems like you were
We might be the
pretty.
same person.
Well, okay. So that of course adds to the whole, situation.
Yep.
And and also I was getting IT certifications. And I had a commander who saw this in me when I was 19 years old. He saw that I had potential, and he put me, at the time I didn't like him for it, but now I'm thankful. He put me in charge of the IT department at that hospital, and that was the second largest hospital in the Air Force at the time. So it was a great experience of being overseeing the technology department. I wasn't ready for it, I'll tell you that much. But the military does that to you. They throw you into the fire, and you got to figure it out. So I was getting everything I needed, during those 6 years, to get the experience, to get the education. Thank God, it was paid for by the military, because I was, and I yeah, was able to, after the 6 years, leave and become the CIO of a hospital system in the civilian world. So things went, and then again, I
Wow.
could continue, but things kind of, went from there. Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, I think that's such a great example of one of the ways that you can really take advantage of some of the benefits of being in the military. I think a lot of times people kind of I don't want to say I don't think they really understand the opportunities that gives some of the poor kids growing up who really don't
Right.
have many opportunities. And it wasn't like I was. Everybody thinks inner city, and while we weren't, I wasn't inner city. I was, the rural poor.
Mm,
They were, they the kids growing up with less in the country, the military gives you a chance, right? It gives you a
yeah.
chance to make some money, learn some discipline, kind of pick yourself up, be around other people who are disciplined, who are going places. You can also find people who are not going places in the military too.
Yes.
And so I think the interesting part was you chose, though, and this is really important, you chose to have no life for 6 years, as you put it. You chose to, like put your nose to the grindstone and just like get it done. You had a plan and you were executing. There were plenty of people I'm sure, even in the Air Force, who weren't so dedicated, and they spent their time partying, having a good time, spending all their money, going
Yeah.
out. They spend it all on a car, and they spend it
Yeah.
all on girls or boys, and they have a great time. But they're
Right.
living a different life, right?
That's true.
So what was it that drove you to decide, hey, I'm going to spend the next 6 years really,
Yeah.
focused here?
Well, Matt, I think so this is where I'm going to try not to get too emotional. I didn't want, I didn't, I think there was something in me that thought that I was meant to be in that household with three generations, right? That's just how it was for me. We had, for a while, in different points of my life, we'd have three generations in the same household. And again, thankfully, I had a loving family. And so that was okay at the time for sure. But I think after I kind of got out of that realm and saw how things could be and saw that, oh, actually, I think that, we are, when I say we, I was thinking my Hispanic family, like we are capable of, you know, doing something and getting the education and buying a home. We are capable. It motivated me so much. I just wanted to prove to my family that it could be done. There was something in me that I just so badly, wanted to prove that, because I think another challenge that I think that I had, and I've had to struggle, get through over the course of the years, is that, when you're one of many as in a big Hispanic family, you also don't feel very valued. I mean, nobody ever, not ever, until I was 20 years old, nobody had ever told me, "Hey, I think you're smart," or "Hey, I think you're capable," or "Hey, I think college is for you." Nobody ever said that to me. And when I was 20 years old, and I had just joined the military, I had called my father for the first time, and that was also a big thing for me too. And I'll never forget. One day we were talking on the phone. He was like, "Well, hey, are you going to be going to college?" And that threw me off because I wasn't planning on it. And I said, "Well, I don't know." And he goes, "Well, I mean, you must be smart. You're my son." And that just pow, because he's the first person that ever alluded to me maybe being smart, and
Mm.
it just really so that motivation, combined with the want to prove that we could do something, I think really, really fueled the fire for a while, and maybe in an unhealthy manner.
I don't know. It seems to have worked out well for you. I mean, I feel the same way. I had a perhaps an unhealthy uh obsession with breaking free from my kind of roots from my
Right,
and I
right,
worked a tirelessly. I mean, so many, nights and weekends, just really determined that I wasn't going to end up the same way.
right,
And not that it's bad. It's just that I
right.
wanted to, and I can't tell you why. I had this feeling very similarly that I'm, you know, even growing up, it's funny because when you grow up in whatever environment, that's just the norm for you, right? Like that's it. You
Yes,
don't know that you're
exactly.
poor until you meet a rich kid, and then you're like, shit, are we
Exactly.
poor? Right? You just know that you're like happy, life is whatever it is, and you're like, okay, this is
Yeah.
normal. And then you're like,
Right.
oh, their normal is it's got a lot more stuff than my normal, right? And so
Right.
I think it's easy to focus if you just getting by with enough money to feed the family and there's love and happiness. I think that can not that there's anything wrong with that. That's an important like baseline, right? Um, but I think it helps keep people at that level, and I don't and life is so much better when you've experienced some sort of success, when you're working towards your success, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is. And I'm not necessarily talking financial, or
Right.
monetary, but when
Absolutely.
you're working hard and you're achieving achieving these goals, to me, it's so much more rewarding and life takes on so much more meaning, and you can share that and inspire others with it. Like, even
Exactly.
and I think that's just so much better than just kind of like, okay, just existing in a comfortable state, whether that comfortable is very wealthy or poor. You can be comfortable at any economic level. And I don't know, I think there's something really great about that striving to improve yourself and your life and kind of move up. I'm not sure there's ever a time where I'd be happy if I just kind of
Well,
stayed.
yeah, 100%.
Um, right?
100%. And you mentioned uncomfortable. I could, gosh, there's so many. I think there was a lot of discomfort. There's no doubt about it. There were a lot of risks that I took. I think a lot of people were saying you're crazy for leaving the military. You have the security, you have everything you need. They're taking care of you, all these things. Why would you? And plus, it was and you and I were talking before this about how little you were getting paid as a new military member.
Yeah.
But for me, I was like, this is great. And it really wasn't much, but I thought it was great. So even for me, that was the best I had ever lived, even though
Yeah.
I was a newly enlisted person. And, um, but I took the risk to leave it. And, so yeah, I was uncomfortable, for a
Yeah.
little while. And then I could keep telling you about all the other uncomfortable decisions I made because we could keep going, Matt. Not
Well, I'd love to, because I think this is really, I love the kind of diverse, paths that people take into IT. And, because I think a lot of times people think if you don't grow up some sort of uber geek who,
Yeah.
is drinking Mountain Dew, eating Oreos in a dark basement, hacking
Right.
into the Pentagon, for fun on the weekends, then you're probably not going to make it in tech. And I think that is, I think that's a crazy proposition, because we meet very successful people like you who come from the most diverse backgrounds. I mean, an Air Force combat medic, to CIO of ATL. That is fantastic. I mean, that is, it doesn't get much more diverse than that, right?
Yeah,
You
way
can't,
too
right?
right.
And so, no, I love that. So let's continue on that path. So
Yeah.
you have this great boss who gets you who you back in the Air Force, who helps you to kind of take over the IT, which is crazy, taking over the IT for this. So how did you go from so this is so you're the combat medic in this hospital system, right?
Right,
and
right, right.
and that transition from combat medic into IT, how
Hmm.
did that go? I mean, yeah, you
Yeah.
you you obviously, what did you get a class where you were like, hey, you know what, I think I like computers? Like, how did that happen, going from
Yeah.
combat medic to IT?
The people that can influence you in your life. Because I wasn't really thinking of technology joining the military. I just, again, as I mentioned, I just wanted to help people. But when I called my father, right, shortly after I joined the military, my father was a software engineer, and he seemed to be doing all right. And I thought, huh. And so he was talking to me a bit about the realm of technology. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to pursue a degree in IT. So I got my associates in healthcare management, though, but then I quickly pivoted over to, more of a computer science type degree. And while I was doing that, I was also thinking, well, how do I get involved with the IT department? And again, someone noticed me and thought, okay, we can put you in the IT department, because I was proving myself where I was at. I was working hard. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to prove myself, and so I wanted them to see that I was worthy of being put in higher positions or different areas in the hospital environment. And I remember thinking, to your point, I remember, oh, these technology people are so smart. They're doing, only the smart ones of us get to be over in IT and technology. And so I just fought really hard for that. And I put myself out there a bit. And then, yeah, they allowed me to go into the IT department. And I was in there, and I was, part of help desk support, just doing everything to support, technology while getting my degree. And then, of course, it was only a few months later when they just decided to put me in charge, which is crazy when
That's
you think
awesome.
about it. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what? What do you think? So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that they put you in charge because of your people skills. Is that? Would you say that that's fair and accurate?
I think that is, and I do want to be specific. The Air Force has certain titles, right? So since I was enlisted, I was the non-commissioned officer in charge of
Hmm.
information
And
systems,
so
right?
I
So we
see.
did have a
Yep.
commander; he was an officer, right? You get the structure, but I was the non-commissioned officer in charge, and so I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, and so yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. They just saw the drive, they saw the hunger, but I think that they also saw something I didn't see in myself. That it seemed like people could connect with me. And my commander saw that, and I apparently got plenty of feedback from others to
Yeah.
him saying, "Hey, this guy, you should do something with him." And so I'm very thankful people were looking out for me.
Well, I got to ask you, so do you think that is because of your big Hispanic family growing up that you were, it was a very friendly, loving environment where kind of relationships were valued and communication was important. And so you grew up in an environment where that was kind of cultivated. Maybe not in a professional way, obviously, but in a
Right?
the interpersonal skills were
Yeah.
very important. Do you think is
Wow.
that true?
Yeah. I mean, I love that you're going that route. I haven't really thought of it in that way, but I think that you're right. My because when you're in a home with three generations, you don't really get much privacy, and you are so you grow to know those that you're around very well. And but yes, we there was a lot of communication, a lot of that. Those emotional connections. I think
Yeah.
that's what I can speak to. Right? It's interesting because it's not like you could have, and again, it is just what it is. I'm just saying the facts of the matter for my family. It's not like we would sit there and have philosophical discussions,
Right.
right? But because of those emotional connections, because we had gone through a lot together, there were certain things that were tough that that we knew even in a moment was pretty tough. We went through it together. My mother, she was just trying to survive. And so when I look back on that, I genuinely respect her. But there were moments where it was tough, for her, and she was just trying to make it, and so I think that allowed us to grow, at least my siblings, allowed us to grow a little bit closer to, again, even though maybe we couldn't articulate it in an intelligent way, it was like you just had something there.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense because I think, I grew up one of five kids, all seven of us in a
Hmm,
small trailer. Similar, yeah, there's not a lot of
okay.
space, there's not a lot of privacy.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and so there's a lot that goes kind of unsaid and there's a lot that so it's interesting. I think and I think we're seeing today a lot of kids suffer from not getting those interpersonal skills growing up because
Right.
even when we were kids, there was going outside and playing more. There was, that which doesn't exist now. So now the playing is online. There's not that interpersonal skills. So I think a lot of young people really struggle with that. And I think it's one of those things, especially in tech, where we tend to attract people who are more interested in the technology than people. And so,
Right.
kind of finding those people that they kind of balance that out and can appreciate the human side of
Yes.
technology and let's just call it IT because you know,
Yeah.
you're a therapist and a technician at the same time, right? People call in, they got a problem. Um, you got to be their therapist, keeping them from either jumping off the ledge or throwing their computer off the ledge, whatever it might be.
Yep.
And then you can help them with the technology problem. So I mean, I
Yep.
think that it comes across very clearly that you're a very sincere person, and I think that that must have helped as you kind of progressed in through those early years in the Air Force and
Yeah.
on up.
Well, I have to say, with that, being sincere, I appreciate that. And of course, that's something that I firmly believe in today, being honest and being sincere.
Yeah.
But I will say that I feel like I had to learn that the hard way. So when I left the military and became the CIO of a hospice system, strictly civilian, that was a culture shock for me. That was tough. And that was the hardest role I've ever had. And primarily because of what we're getting into. I got I learned the hard way about what it means to be sincere and to be honest with yourself, so that you can be honest with others. It was my first role as a CIO, and I was 25 years old, and
Wow.
so I had a lot I had in my at least in my head I had a lot to prove.
Yep.
Um, but my gosh, I had to get used to a different way of interacting with people. In the military, I think I got used to just people being blunt about, look, it's this way, take it, leave it, we got to move, and so I had to adjust to that. But then leaving and then being in the severe, you can't just do that, you can't. It's not a follow the water type of situation and move on. So I made quite a few mistakes, and thankfully not in an extreme way or anything like that, but I made a few mistakes and not fully understanding, that you have to, as a CIO, if you're going to be leading technology for an organization, you of course have to tell the story. If you're going to be successful in implementing innovation and technology, you have to be able to connect with others in a way that it makes sense to them. And I learned that the hard way in my first organization. And just summarize that, failed to convince the organization we needed to do something. That something was very important. That something crashed and we were down for 72 hours. And that was the worst 72 hours of my life. I got 4 hours of sleep during that time frame. We got it back up and going, and then of course now everyone's convinced we need to do it, right? But I took it upon myself and recognized that was a failure of me. I failed to convince why this project was important. And I could apply that to so many other things. So yeah, being sincere, I think, is very, very important. But it also hopefully can allow people to trust you faster when you're just being sincere and honest about, look, hey, this is an issue. This is why it's an issue. I'm not just trying to sell you something. I'm not trying to build my castle, right? This is sincerely something that's going to impact us. I could go on, Matt.
Oh, it's so funny. I think it's the parallels in our lives. It's fascinating to me because it's like we're like twins almost in ways, because it's so weird. Well, I had a very similar issue when I got to Japan.
Mhm.
And I was, for the first time, I'm now in this cushy intelligence role, and the Defense Intelligence Agency basically writes this manual on how intel is done in these kinds of environments. Cool, great. So there's a book on it. Great. So I go through the book and I'm like, great, I got it. Now this is how we do it, right? And now at the time, I'm like this hard charging E5,
Right. Yeah.
and what happens is I end up being so good at the intel part that they put me in charge of all the intel that we're collecting and putting out in Japan. I'm a lowly E5, and we have colonels and these chief warrant officers
Right.
all
Right.
submitting their stuff, and I'm like, nope, this is messed up. Fix it,
Right.
send it back. And I'm kicking back their stuff. That's like, it's got to go out. It's not going out until it's right. And so what was funny is I didn't learn and so people really started disliking me like a lot. But the the CO was very happy with the fact that the intel was always spot on. And so
Yeah.
what was really interesting was it was creating this real problem with the people who hated me, and yet the output was great. So it's kind of like this, almost like this Elon Musk type situation where, yeah, the output's great, but not the best personality for people, right? In any event, I didn't even read it. I got from the library at Camp Zama, for whatever reason, I got the book on tape, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I listened to it and I was like, okay, cool. I didn't
Mm.
think anything of it. But you fast forward a few weeks and people were like, what happened to Connor? Did he have like a near death experience? Did he have like, I mean, it's night and day,
Right.
apparently. I didn't notice a thing, but apparently I'm now winning friends and influencing people.
There
I'm
you
I'm
go.
talking very nicely. Things are just and now I'm everybody loves me. And I had no idea. I was just like, I heard the book and I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And then it just kind of I was just doing it. And it was just so funny. But that became a very important part of my future success was the people portion, which was kind of hard. It was a tough lesson to learn. It wasn't an obvious one, but I guess it was a fast learn. But then from there, I really focused on it and kind of
Yeah.
worked on that moving forward. But it was funny, the kind of night and day difference as you go out into the civilian world, because I'm dealing with, at the same time I'm dealing with all these civilians on the intel side as well. And it's entirely different that you can be hard charging military and
Mm.
everybody's like, okay, cool, to some degree. But the civilian side, not so much. So it's funny just how similar our paths are there with that
Mm.
with those same lessons.
Yeah, that is. I'm thank you again for sharing that. This really is almost like therapy, but I
We're on a
look
little
at
therapy session here.
yeah. Well, I think because you get that that I that actually stood out to me so strongly. So this whole thing of how different things can be when you find out how to, and again, it's not. I have to say that at least from my perspective, being honest with myself, it wasn't self-serving. I genuinely wanted what was best for the organization. And I knew I was in a position where I was making decisions and I didn't want to, and of course we're going to make wrong decisions sometimes. There's no doubt about it. But I wanted to do my best not to. And with that, it meant that I had to be in a situation where folks felt comfortable coming to me. They trust me, right? Or even my executive peers, and of course the CEO of my organization. Do they trust me? Am I able to influence decisions through being honest and them knowing that I genuinely want what's best for the organization, not for
Yeah.
just IT, not just for my people, but for the company. And so connecting this to a crazy step that I ended up taking, connected to this, I was running into a situation in a hospital setting where, of course, hey, let's move forward with technology. But physicians, doctors, right, those who take care of our patients, there was a few in a board meeting, and they were completely against technology. And so I wanted to move forward with modernizing our electronic medical record. And one of them just said, why would we spend any money on that when our paper records do just fine? Right. And another one said, I didn't go to medical school to type on a keyboard. I went to
Nice.
medical school to take care of patients. Right. So I had a big challenge ahead of me. And, you know, this is going to sound crazy to you. I know it is. But I so badly wanted to be in a situation where I could prove to them that you can do this that I thought to myself, I'm just going to go to medical school. And you know what? I did. And so I went back, got my pre-med education in, took the MCAT, applied to a few medical schools. I got into a few, and I went up to Michigan. And so I
Nice.
went to medical school. And,
That's awesome.
yeah, but a lot of reasons why, right? Also going back to the whole family dynamic of, hey, you guys can do this too. If I can get into medical school, so can
Yep.
you, right? So the whole thing. There was so much um, motivating me to go that route. But of
Yeah.
course, I have to be honest and say that after just a little bit of time of actually being there, I love what I was learning. I love what I was doing. But the realization kicked in that I was probably not going to be another 10 years until I was like actually, back in the professional world, back in like doing the job.
Yep.
And I had a hard time with that. And
Yeah.
so I made a tough decision to go ahead and get back into leading IT, leaving medical school behind. But the point is going back to the influence, right? I so badly wanted to be in a position where I could ensure that people knew that, hey, I'm coming from a good place. You can trust me. I have the reputation, I have the experience. I think I was also struggling with my age at the time, right? That was definitely not something that was helping me. So anything I could have behind my name, anything that could help, I was all about
That's
it. Yeah.
fantastic. So what happens after that? So you get into your first CIO role, and
Mhm.
and how's it go from there?
Yeah, well, that first 3 hour role was tough. It was really, really, really tough. And what's crazy is when I think back on it, I learned so much from that, of course, so that I still apply today. But things were fine, and then I ended up going to another hospital system. Things were fine there. That's when I took my medical school detour, and then from there, went back into the military. I was on a I commissioned. I eventually commissioned as an officer.
Right.
So going from enlisted to a commission officer in the Air Force Reserves. So I'm still in the Air Force Reserves today, actually. So I was on orders full time as an officer, doing that for a bit in the IT space. And then I ended up being a civil servant, so a government employee for an organization called U.S. Transportation Command. And during that time frame, I finished out my education. Finally, I got my I went to Vanderbilt University, so I got my doctorate from Vanderbilt, and I finished that in 2023. So Matt, all the way up until 2023, I was in some form of schooling or education. It wasn't until 2023 that I finally had no college on the side to do.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot, and of course now I'm here.
That's fantastic. So how did you get this particular job, if I may ask?
Yeah. So at U.S. Transportation Command, that's an organization of 138,000 globally. And it's all about air, land, and sea transportation. So I got exposed with leading technology for them in those different realms, and so it just seemed like this fit pretty well with that.
Yep.
um, yeah, and but honestly, I didn't think that I would be considered.
Yeah.
So so that worked out really well. But yeah, I think that the connections were there, and I have finished my education. So I thought, okay, I think I'm in a situation now where I can perhaps take on a new role like that. So I applied here, not knowing anyone from here at all. Just went through the traditional interview process, and yeah, worked out. I've been here for just a little over a year now.
That's
Hmm.
fantastic. I mean, I love these stories, and I think it's going to resonate. I mean, obviously it resonates with me because we have such a
Sure.
similar story. So if nothing else, your story resonates very well with me. But
Well, I'm
I think
glad.
I think that I think it, and it's also funny because I had kicked around the idea of going to med school when I left Japan, which is so funny because when you said that, I was like, no way. That's funny. I didn't actually go to med school. I'd looked to do it, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to do
Yeah.
this. And then at the time, my marriage started falling apart because I was working crazy hours, and that was the
Yeah.
when I was in Japan, that was the only time I could go to college. So what I did was I went and worked. I was taking a double load of college while I was in the army full time. So, and at that time, this was right around September 11th. So we're working 60, 80 hours a week. I'm taking a double load of college. So I'm really not I'm barely sleeping, let alone, being a decent husband and father, right? So
Right.
I'm like working constantly, and I'm not around. I mean, I'm around, but it in any event. When I finished up in Japan, I was like, you know what, I should, maybe med school is the way to go. Become a
Yeah.
doctor, having a, but that obviously wasn't in the cards with what was going on with the rest of my life. I was like, I'll never make it through all the schooling,
Yeah.
and just with the financially it wouldn't work and everything. But
Yeah.
that was definitely something that was alluring to me too.
Well,
Um,
isn't it interesting those things that can happen though, right? So you went through that. There's a circumstance that you're going through. You went through that, and even that can teach you a lot, though. Because I think, as I mentioned, I got married way too young. I didn't know enough about myself, and so I also went through that, separation, and that teaches you a lot too. It can teach you a lot about yourself and what matters to you. So yeah, yeah, all those experiences, right? They all add up.
They really do. And I think one of the interesting things is I think it is the perspective, the being able to see those challenges, those things that happen in life, and see them for, oh, these really do help me on my path. These are lessons that I'm learning and I'm growing. And a lot of people don't see it that way. It's like, oh, why is
Right.
this happening to me? It's happening to
Yeah,
you so you can learn and grow from it. What do you mean?
absolutely.
That's not even a
Yeah,
question. That's like
yeah,
that
yeah,
life happens to people and it's how you deal with it that matters. You can see the same thing very negatively, or you can see it very positively, the same exact thing. And the only thing that changes is your mindset and how you feel about that thing. And then if you've got this great mindset from it, you're going to do great things from it. Instead of that thing doing bad things to you, you're now going
yeah.
to do great things because of it. And
Yeah, there
so,
you go. Take it
right?
home, man. Take it home, man. I think that's the
Hallelujah.
whole yeah, exactly. To me, I feel like what you just said, that is at the core actually of what I firmly believe in these days. That it's a mindset shift because, when folks I've been able to communicate with a lot more folks that are going through some tough times. They're trying to figure out what they want to do with their life, with their career. And if they even start to talk about, well, my father this, or oh, well, we grew up this way, or well, I can't possibly afford college, all these things. It is, I recognize, just like, okay, it's about changing the mindset.
Yeah.
We need to view this differently. And I'm not saying that I did that when I was younger, because like I think you alluded to earlier, you didn't know any different.
Yep.
Not like, oh, you were just poor, and until you're around someone that wasn't, you didn't know the difference.
Yep.
So I wish that I wish I could tell you that I just had the intelligence to know, like,
Yeah.
oh, I can use this to my betterment or whatever. But no, I didn't. I just thought that was life,
Yeah.
right? Now, thankfully, later I can look back and think, you know what? It's because of those things. It's because of this, this, and this, and that has allowed me to think the way that I do, and I think that's really helped me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love that. Well, you know what? I want to, since this is, I think, focused on how this can help so many other people, getting into IT and with those challenges. I'm going to ask you, one question that I think would be good for people coming into IT, and what would you say is your biggest IT tip for new professionals?
Yeah, so just new professionals attempting to get into IT, just
Hmm.
generally. Yeah, technology, as you know this very well. Technology is really, really exciting. It's just getting more and more exciting as time goes on. We've known for many years it's what's going to transform organizations, but now it's becoming a lot more obvious. Right? When we consider artificial intelligence, we consider what data has been able to do for our organizations. So it's really, really exciting. So if someone is interested in technology, but they don't know where to get started, I mean, okay, college, of course, you can get a degree in cybersecurity, data science, software engineering, network engineering, right? You can do that path. If you think maybe college isn't for me right now, or is there another way for me? Well, that's okay too. There's plenty of certifications. You can study for a certification, those network pluses, security pluses, the CCNAs, things like that, and just really dig into it. And anywhere these days, you can learn so much online. My brother right now is a software engineer now. He's my youngest brother. But he actually got kicking by just going to ChatGPT, and he was just learning as much as possible on the side. He coded. He was just coding. I need to learn. And he was just learning so much on his own before even getting the job, before even going to college. Because of that, he ended up getting into Georgia Tech for his master's degree.
Nice.
So I just think that we all have, I think if you're interested, just dig into it, go online, start to learn on your own, start really getting into it, maybe get a certification, and then just try to get your foot in the door. Take any IT job. It's entry level IT, because in my organization, our entry level positions, they end up going in all the different routes. They go with cybersecurity, they go the network route, they become a software engineer, they become a data scientist. I've seen them start entry level, keep their education going, and we support that. And then they can choose the path that they want to take. So that's what I would recommend to someone. It's just get started, get learning, and then just get your foot in the door. And then from there, you can choose your path.
That is
Yeah.
awesome. Chris, I can't thank you enough for coming on. This has been absolutely spectacular. And before we head out, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you? And I can't imagine that they don't know about ATL, but where they can find out more about ATL.
Yeah, of course. Well, for me, I haven't really put myself out there too much yet. But so the only thing I have is a LinkedIn profile. So you can find me on LinkedIn. But other than that, yes, of course, it's the busiest airport in the world. So Hartsfield-Jackson, Atlanta International Airport. If you've probably flown through Atlanta. But yeah, you can certainly look into the organization. We got incredible things going on, incredible technology initiatives going on building a lot. It's almost like a nonstop construction zone. So it's just nonstop growth. It's really, really exciting. So you can certainly go there. And of course, if you see me on LinkedIn, if you want to message me and talk about these things, I'd be really happy to discuss this with anyone willing to listen, So I think that sums that up, I suppose.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks again, Chris. And until next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.